Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're trying something different, David.
Yeah, board game related and video game related.
Dude, we're huge video gamers.
Yeah.
Now, it goes without question, we've both worked in the video game industry for years. We've been around them since we've been very little kids. Grew up on Ataris, ColecoVisions, and televisions, Nintendos, everything else that you can imagine.
Yeah, it's really what led me to even playing board games, too. I mean, I love all things games, but I started with video games. And Super Dungeon Tactics is what we're talking about today, and this thing is sort of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
It's very similar, obviously, to Super Dungeon Explorer, but it also harkens back to things like Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah.
A lot of those old Japanese RPGs.
Some of my favorite games. So this is a kind of a mashup between Super Dungeon Explorer and a tactics game in a video game format. It's very cool because it's all campaign driven, and all the stuff that you do in Super Dungeon Explorer is done in a electronic format, so there's no more dice rolling. It's all done for you.
Right.
And they can do some really cool, unique stuff in this game that you can't do in a board game.
Yeah, they definitely, and things they haven't done in video games either, where they're sort of incorporating sort of the DNA of the board game, but in the video game format.
So we're going to go ahead and show you a couple different aspects of the game. First off, this is on sale now. It went on sale today, February the 15th. We'll try to get this video out shortly. And they're running a 1-week sale for 20% off on the game.
And I think the regular price is $19.99, so I think you're going to be getting it somewhere around $15, $16.
And it's available on Steam.
Yeah.
So you can check it out there. As we said, it's based off of Super Dungeon Explorer. The entire game has 15 characters that you can play, and they retain all the chibi aspects that you get in the typical Super Dungeon Explorer game. So there's 15 characters, about 35 to 45 hours of gameplay.
Yeah, it's a good length of game. I mean, this is the kind of game that you would expect from a video game tactics style game.
Right. There's 255 unique weapons in the game, and that's without the 1.2 update. There may be more stuff coming with that, which should be very soon. And there's 55 total tiles or levels in the game. Those are basically areas that you go to. So this is the guild hall, and I wanted to show you guys this because this is where you do all of your planning in the game. You get ready for your next mission. There's a variety of different missions you can play. There's training scenario missions, there's story missions, and then there's bounty missions, which you'll want to do in order to farm more equipment.
Yeah, you can actually farm in this game, which is pretty interesting too.
And I like the way they did weapon distribution in this game too. Typically in games you can get really low level weapons depending on what level you are. This game has a progressive leveling system with all the weapons, so the more stats you get with your character, the better levels, the better weapons that you get according to where you are in the story.
Yeah, it's cool.
So let's show you how this actually works. In here, you're going to pick one of the quests that you want to go on, and it'll show you a story map here of all the locations. I'm about a third of the way through the game right now. You have your purple are your story missions. Your bounty missions are the ones that you'll be wanting to farm to go over. On the right-hand side, it tells you how many items you can take with you. Items allow you to move your character further, heal characters, get armor buffs, and all kinds of different things. You only start with 2 items. I've unlocked a backpack, which gives me a 3rd item.
Cool.
And then you get to, this is awesome, you get to set the difficulty of the game. Depending on the difficulty, it gives you bonuses in the game for finding certain kinds of mods, such as common, rare, and then mystic, which are your best weapons.
It's hard to not want to go higher and higher with the lure of all the goodies.
I know, but there's definitely a detriment when you do. I'm playing on veteran right now, which means that all your baseline stats for the enemies are normal. However, there is a death recover penalty. That means if one of your characters dies, if they start a new one, they only start at 1% of their normal health, which is hard, but also gives me a multiplier on finding new weapons in the game, which is fantastic. So you're going to pick, again, your items and the characters that you want to go on the mission for you. This is the best part that I absolutely love in the game. You have a hero builder, and on the bottom here it shows all the characters that I've collected, and these are your typical fantasy tropes. You have your fighters, your rogues, your clerics.
And you get these as you play, too.
Yes,
because, I mean, I've started the game, too. I'm a little ways into it. And you just start with 2 characters, in fact.
Yeah. And as you unlock them, you can name them, of course, whatever you wish to name them. But this portion is awesome. So you have 4 different kinds of items that you can equip. You have weapons, you have armors, and then you have 2 kind of buff type things. But this is great. Each of these weapons gives you a unique die face to it.
This is super cool.
So, for instance, I have a axe equipped here, and it gives me a critical hit and a movement. If I equipped a different weapon there, it could give me different buffs. This creates a new die for you in the bottom left-hand corner, which is awesome. So you could have a 4-sided die, you could have a 12-sided die, you could have a 10-sided die, and that all will change, and that's important because when you actually are playing the game, what you're rolling will depend upon how you allocate those types of resources.
And we'll get this in a second, too. The dice in this game, too, are dice that you're not rolling when in combat.
Yeah.
You're rolling them at the beginning of the combat phase, and we'll get into that in a second. It's very cool because it's not really a dice chucker.
No, not at all.
In the sense of the term.
Also, when you equip weapons on the bottom left-hand side, it shows your character and it shows what arc of attack they have on what you're using. So it'll change with what kind of weapons that you have attached to those particular characters.
Yeah, this is an example of one of those great things that video games can do a little bit better in some cases than board games. It consolidates a lot of the information. You're not having to sort through book after book and things like that.
So, in a contrast, you're looking over here at the fighter. He has a 10-sided die because he has 10 icons up here. But if you look at my barbarian, it's just a 6-sided die, and that's because they have less icons on the equipment that they have.
Right, and it's cool because you can not only pick the things, pick the sides of the dice depending on what equipment you have out, but the number of sides, so you're able to kind of play around with the probabilities there. You could really lay someone up so there's only 2 options on the die faces, but it's a very high percentage chance you're going to get what you want.
So I'm actually going to go into a mission right now and show you how all this kind of collates together. So this is called Bump in the Night. This is probably a little over a third of the way through. And
it's an interior mission, right? And
yes,
there's a lot of different environments. A lot of the early ones are exterior, but it's a really, as you can see, an extraordinarily well done game. This thing is put together really well. The map, super smooth, all the same, all the functionality that you'd be looking for in a game.
So every story mission is going to start the same. You're going to pick a starting tile, and there's an outline of where your characters can start. It'll tell you how many characters you can bring into the mission, so prior to starting the mission, you can take whichever characters you want to level up at that time. You're going to place them in there, and on the right-hand side and the upper right-hand side, it'll tell you what you need to do in order to finish this mission. Now, this is great. Once you have selected your characters and where they want to go, you just hit ready. This is really, really cool. So all the dice that I have brought into this scenario get rolled. There are 4 silver dice because there's 4 characters that I'm using. And then there are 3 black die. The black die will change depending upon how many high-level enemies that you have in the game.
So not the normal mobs, but there are high-level enemies, and those each come with a die as well.
Yes.
The cool thing here is their die aren't just their die, and your die aren't just yours.
Right.
They're all rolled together, and then it's based on the initiative down here, right?
Right. So the initiative on the bottom works, and it's random every single round. So you're going to be rolling these dice at the start of every round. In turn order of where they get to take their initiative in the round, you allocate these dice to particular different characters. Some of the dice will give you a critical hit. Some of them will allow your character to move further. But the big ones are the ones that have the blue and the red button on them. Those are tied into specific weapons that your character can have equipped. So you could be doing a sweeping attack that does more damage, or a attack that debuffs the characters that you're hitting. Very, very cool. So some of the times you're going to be getting allocations from dice when enemies go before you with the skulls on them, and those are typically bad things that could happen to you, debuffing your character or removing critical damage from hitting at particular times. So you're going to play through the scenario. As normal, you're going to pick the character. I'm going to go ahead and auto-assign these dice. It'll pick where these dice go onto my character, so it'll show in the upper right-hand portion of their portrait which dice that they get. Sometimes the skulls don't do anything. If we're looking at my barbarian here that I've called Blood Rage, a skull die does nothing because the weapon that she has equipped doesn't need a skull dice and doesn't do anything bad to her. All the characters have inherent move. Some of them move quicker and further than others, and you just simply pick the character, you drag it to where you want to move it, and she has a lancing attack, which means it'll go through stuff, and you just hit OK, and then you do the attack. What's cool about this game is that there's no randomness to it, right?
Right, the dice don't play a role in the damage that you're doing.
No, each of the characters that you're fighting against has their own built-in hit points and their own built-in armor. and they could have some shields on them from the dice allocations, but once you take their armor down, all of your other damage is going to go through depending upon the weapon that you're using.
Right, and that's also what I love, back to the dice again, is because depending on what situation you're in, say you're midway through one of the scenarios, and you have one guy who normally does 1 damage.
Right.
And you really need to do 2 damage to the guy you're next to. When you're drafting, not drafting, but choosing your die at the beginning, you're able to say, okay, in this situation, I'm going to give him the extra damage just so I can finish that off.
Yeah.
Whereas generally, you might give him extra movement because his base movement may be a little lacking or something like that.
So how the story actually pans out, most of the missions are single tiles at the start, but I'm starting in getting to some of these missions where there are multiple tiles. So you have to do a fight. Once the fight is over, it progresses to a new tile without going back to your guild hall. So you have to make sure that you have the right equipment packed. You have to make sure that you have enough healing potions, because when your characters die, or whatever hit points you're left over with one tile, they'll carry over into the next tile, which is really cool.
And that's how these games, the difficulty really ramps up.
Yeah.
Because when you have to last longer and longer and longer in these things, that's where it becomes very difficult.
So how does this all tie in with Super Dungeon Explorer? Super Dungeon Tactics has their own little miniature in here that they created.
Right. In fact, starting in this game, they created the Iron Golem, which first, I believe, appears in Super Dungeon Tactics.
I don't know, we haven't seen it yet, but we think it was created for the game.
And for Super Dungeon Explorer, they actually created a real miniature for that game. You can actually get this, comes with a key for the game, as well as a miniature. So this is really the kind of thing that's for existing fans of Explore.
Yeah.
And hopefully to get them into Tactics.
Yeah. Also, we've been given information that the game should be available Q3 for Xbox.
Yeah, Xbox One and PS4, I'm guessing.
Which we play all of these games on.
Yeah, that's where I will play most of it. I've tried it on Steam, but I will likely play it mostly on PS4 or Xbox.
We both like the game. I really like the game. I love tactics games. I grew up with these style of games. I highly suggest it.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's really well done. I wouldn't have honestly, I wouldn't have expected it to be executed as well as it has been. This is just as fun, if not more so in some respects, than a lot of the old Japanese RPGs that we played, the tactics ones.
And the die aspect is really, really unique. I haven't seen any game that's used this type of manipulation of dice and how it kind of mixes the board game genre with the video game genre. Very cool game. Go check it out. Make sure you guys support us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple.
Yeah, and let us know if you'd like to see us cover more things like this. We're trying to bring you what you'd like to see, whether it be board games or board game related.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.